The camera drifts lazily over a neat grid of cul-de-sacs in Frederick, Colorado, those perfectly manicured lawns clipped to a ruler's edge, American flags fluttering gently in a dry, whispering breeze, and sprinklers ticking away like metronomes marking the rhythm of suburban bliss. At the end of one quiet block sits a tan two-story home with a welcoming porch swing creaking softly and a wide, inviting smile of a driveway curving up to the garage. Inside this picture-perfect abode lives the Watts family, Chris, his vibrant and pregnant wife Shanann, and their two adorable daughters, 4-year-old Bella with her wide-eyed curiosity and 3-year-old Celeste, full of boundless energy. They move through a choreography of ordinary American mornings, a routine that seems straight out of a feel-good family sitcom. Chris appears first as the archetype of reliability, a quiet, dedicated technician in the vast oil fields of Anadarko Petroleum, rising before the first light of dawn, his gym shoes lined up precisely by the garage door like soldiers at attention. He hoists the girls effortlessly with his strong arms, planting a grin into their tousled hair as colorful cartoons chatter away in the background, filling the air with laughter and chaos. In the home videos Shanann so lovingly captured, Chris's voice is soft and agreeable, the kind of man most neighbors would describe with the same 3 reassuring words: nice, helpful, steady. But beneath that facade, Chris harbored a growing restlessness, a dissatisfaction with the life he had built, one that simmered quietly like a storm cloud on the horizon, unnoticed by those around him. Shanann, on the other hand, is the on-camera heartbeat of the family, warm, charismatic, and always in perpetual motion, her energy infectious and her smile lighting up every room. Her phone serves as both a personal diary and a public stage, where she documents every milestone with the poise of a seasoned broadcaster, the girls' first days of school filled with nervous excitement and proud tears, spontaneous kitchen dance parties where flower flies and giggles echo, anniversary toasts delivered straight to the lens with heartfelt sincerity. She narrates the family's next chapter with contagious hope, a new baby on the way, a little boy they've already named Nico, symbolizing the promise of a family made complete. But what the videos don't show are the late-night doubts, the moments when Shanann wondered if her relentless positivity could truly bridge the growing chasm in her marriage. The montage is hypnotic, pulling you in, flickering birthday candles casting warm glows on joyful faces, backyard sprinklers arching rainbows in the summer sun as the girls squeal in delight, a tidy pantry with every jar and box labeled into perfect submission, reflecting Shanann's love for organization amid the chaos of motherhood. Her social media posts read like postcards from a life executed to meticulous plan, endless gratitude lists, strings of heart emojis, declarations of love tagged and time-stamped for the world to see. For an audience trained to believe what it sees online, the picture is complete, flawless even. For a moment, even we, the viewers, believe it, lulled into the illusion of perpetual happiness. But away from the lens, another ledger is being tallied in the shadows. Bills arrive like relentless weather fronts, piling up unnoticed, interest compounds silently in the background, turning small debts into looming threats. A house is not just a home, it is an obligation, a constant drain, mortgage payments that stretch the budget thin, HOA fees that demand conformity, the monthly arithmetic of making it all look effortless on the surface. The performance of perfection demands unwavering consistency, and consistency, as it turns out, is extraordinarily expensive, especially when Shanann's direct sales job with Thrive, promoting health patches and supplements, brings in fluctuating income that can't always keep pace with their aspirations. In private, the marriage drifts by degrees that no photograph or video could ever capture, subtle shifts like the slow cracking of ice underfoot. Long silences replace the easy banter that once filled their evenings, texts strained to bridge a gap that keeps widening, reassurances offered in hurried messages, reassurances required with increasing desperation. Chris begins to trim his edges, reshaping himself, new workout routines that sculpt his body into a leaner, more confident form, new playlists blasting motivation in his ears during solitary runs, new hours that stretch later than the clock suggests, often spent away from home under the guise of work. Shanann leans harder into the optimism she knows best, the practiced skill of turning worry into an actionable plan, confiding in friends about her fears while vowing to fight for her family. There are trips that fateful summer, family visits to North Carolina where Shanann reconnects with her roots, work travel for her Thrive business that takes her across states, and with them comes physical and emotional distance. Shanann carries the girls and her burgeoning hope across time zones, her belly swelling with the promise of new life. Chris stays behind with the dogs and the mundane chores that don't make for good social media content, like mowing the lawn or fixing leaky faucets. In airports and rental cars, she drafts wish lists for the future, better communication through couples therapy, a fresh reset button on their relationship, the kind of second act that comes with a baby boy and a promise kept, perhaps even relocating to escape the financial pressures mounting in Colorado. The pregnancy is both an anchor grounding them and a giant question mark hovering over their future. Shanann shares the sonogram proudly on social media, the name Nico already chosen with love, the color palette for a nursery that still smells like fresh paint, soft blues and grays evoking calm and new beginnings. Chris smiles for the camera, nods at the right beats during her announcements, and withdraws to the garage when the recording stops, tinkering with tools as a way to escape the mounting tension. Between them, a space opens where certainty used to be, small at first, like a hairline crack, then measurable, widening into an abyss of unspoken doubts and unaddressed resentments. Neighbors wave across the street and see exactly what they expect to see, the epitome of the American dream. The girls giggle on their scooter wheels, racing up and down the sidewalk, the porch light glows warmly at dusk, casting a welcoming hue. The ideal holds its pose, framed by a seasonal door wreath and an SUV with car seats buckled tight, ready for family adventures. Only the people inside can feel the hairline fractures, stress carried in hushed conversations late at night, in glances that slide past rather than land with affection, in the quiet arguments about money that leave both feeling unheard. And so the facade persists into a seemingly ordinary Sunday in August. Shanann is returning from a short work trip to Arizona, her suitcase rolling behind her, her phone lit with reminders for tomorrow, doctor's appointments, school prep for the girls, more Thrive promotions. The house will be dark when she steps through the door after midnight, the air thick with unspoken tension. By morning, that perfect picture will begin to blur, and the quiet block will learn how quickly an ordinary life can vanish between one day and the next, plunging into a darkness that no one saw coming. The summer night in Colorado hangs heavy and still when Shanann finally returns home. It is just after 2 a.m. on August 13, 2018, the stars above twinkling indifferently. A friend drops her at the curb, her suitcase dragging softly over the concrete driveway, wheels whispering secrets into the night. Shanann unlocks the door of her Frederick house, exhausted from her trip but eager to slip into bed beside her family, unaware that the next few hours will turn this quiet neighborhood into the epicenter of a national nightmare, a story that would dominate headlines and true crime discussions for years. From the outside, everything appears calm, the porch light steady like a sentinel, the blinds drawn tight against the darkness. Inside, no one can see what is about to unfold, the confrontation that would erupt in the master bedroom, fueled by Chris's revelations of his affair and his desire for a separation. By morning, an eerie silence lingers where there is usually a symphony of motion and life. Shanann's friends are accustomed to her constant stream of texts, upbeat updates, and cheerful videos popping up on their phones like clockwork. On this fateful Monday, the notifications never come, no good morning messages, no posts about the day's plans, no reassurance that she and the girls have started their day with breakfast and hugs. The absence is subtle at first, the kind of thing a casual acquaintance might overlook as a busy morning. But for those closest to Shanann, like her dedicated friend Nicole Atkinson who had just dropped her off hours earlier, it feels immediately wrong, a gut-wrenching void that screams something is amiss. Nicole, growing uneasy as the hours tick by without a word, knows Shanann's routines inside out, her commitment to her health, her pregnancy checkups, her unwavering communication. When Shanann misses a scheduled doctor's appointment for her 15-week ultrasound and fails to respond to repeated calls and texts, Nicole decides not to wait any longer. She drives straight to the Watts home, her heart pounding, determined to see for herself if everything is okay. From the driveway, the details are unnerving. Shanann's car is still parked in the garage, untouched. Her purse and keys, objects she never leaves behind, essentials for her on-the-go life, are visible inside the house through the window, abandoned like forgotten relics. The front door is locked tight. There is no answer to her knocks, no sounds of life stirring within. Nicole calls the police without hesitation. What begins as a simple welfare check, routine, almost perfunctory in the eyes of dispatch, will set in motion the unraveling of every carefully constructed story Chris Watts has tried to hold together, exposing layers of deception that run deeper than anyone imagined. The first officer arrives just after lunchtime, his patrol car pulling up to the curb under the glaring August sun. His body camera captures the scene in unflinching real time, Nicole waiting anxiously at the curb, restless and insistent, her voice laced with urgency, the empty driveway framed by the relentless heat waves rising from the pavement. The officer knocks firmly, waits a beat, and knocks again, louder this time. No response echoes back. The garage is sealed shut, the curtains drawn like veils hiding secrets. The house feels less like a bustling family home and more like a stage where the actors have slipped away into the ether, leaving only props behind. As procedure dictates, the officer begins contacting those who might have answers, starting with Chris at his job site. Chris Watts arrives minutes later, summoned from work, pulling up in his truck with an air of hurried concern. He appears calm, almost casual at first, explaining that Shanann may have left with the children for a spontaneous playdate or visit. But his words stumble against the stark reality around him, her car still there, her phone silent, her epilepsy medication untouched in the bathroom cabinet, all still here as if frozen in time. For the friends gathered outside, including Nicole who knows Shanann's habits intimately, the unease deepens into outright dread. Inside, the first cracks in the perfect family portrait are about to be exposed wide open. Officers will note every minute detail, from the missing bed sheet stripped from the master bed to the abandoned handbag spilling its contents on the counter. What began as a friend's genuine concern is now officially a missing persons case, one that will grip the nation in the days to come, spawning documentaries, podcasts, and endless speculation. And yet, even at this early stage, one element stands out like a glaring spotlight: Chris Watts himself. His demeanor, his vague explanations, his very presence on that suburban lawn begin to raise questions that cannot be ignored, whispers among the officers about how his reactions don't quite align with a man whose world has just vanished. The search for Shanann and the children has barely begun, but already suspicion hovers like a storm cloud, waiting for the next development to unleash its fury. The police officer's body camera becomes the first silent witness to the inside of the Watts home, its lens unflinching as the door finally swings open under Chris's key. The frame reveals an unsettling calm that chills the air. Sunlight filters through half-drawn blinds, illuminating a house that should have been alive with the sounds of cartoons blaring and children's laughter bouncing off the walls. Instead, it feels suspended in time, like a stage set after the audience has gone home, props left in place but the energy drained away. On the kitchen counter rests Shanann's purse, inside, her phone still holding unread messages from friends, her wallet with credit cards that tell tales of recent purchases for baby items. These are items she carried everywhere, even on short trips across town to the grocery store or playdates. Upstairs, her favorite shoes are neatly placed by the bed, as if she just kicked them off, her overnight bag dropped haphazardly at the foot of the stairs, unzipped with clothes spilling out. Nothing about the scene suggests a planned departure, there's no packed bags for the girls, no notes left behind. To the trained eye of the officers, these are not just household details, they are glaring red flags waving in the wind, indicators of foul play rather than a voluntary exit. The officers move cautiously through the rooms, cataloging the fragments of daily life with meticulous care, a half-finished meal congealing in the sink, perhaps remnants of a late-night snack Shanann had upon returning, medication laid out in a pillbox on the nightstand, doses for her health conditions untouched, small blankets folded neatly at the foot of the children's beds, their favorite stuffed animals still tucked in as if waiting for bedtime stories. Toys are scattered across the playroom floor, but their absence is louder than their presence, an echoing void where giggles should be. Bella and Celeste are nowhere to be found, their rooms frozen in a moment of innocence. The quiet is oppressive, thick enough to cut with a knife. When Chris Watts arrives, he slips into the frame of the body cam, his presence at once seemingly reassuring and oddly discordant, like a note out of tune in a familiar song. He moves quickly through the house, pointing out rooms with a practiced efficiency, explaining routines in a detached manner, suggesting possibilities like a play date or a friend's house. His tone is calm, perhaps too calm for a man whose pregnant wife and young daughters have seemingly vanished into thin air, his face showing little of the raw panic one might expect. The officers note his composure in their reports, their questions layering gently but persistently, probing for details that seem to evade him. Chris tells them he and Shanann argued earlier that morning, a heated discussion about their crumbling marriage and his desire for separation, that she might have left with the children after the disagreement in a fit of emotion. His account is vague, light on specific details like what words were exchanged or what time it happened, and delivered with the cadence of someone rehearsing lines rather than reliving a painful memory. He avoids prolonged eye contact, shifting his weight from one foot to the other, hands folded tightly across his chest as if holding himself together. The camera records everything without judgment, his clipped sentences, his quick gestures toward empty rooms, the way he seems more intent on moving the search forward than on absorbing the magnitude of what has been lost, perhaps pausing to glance at family photos on the wall with feigned sorrow. For detectives, these are the early signals, small inconsistencies that later loom large, like puzzle pieces that don't quite fit. Outside, neighbors watch from across their manicured lawns, the stillness of their cul-de-sac broken by the flashing lights of squad cars and the crackle of hushed radios. Nicole Atkinson stands close by, her worry escalating into fierce insistence, her voice rising as she reminds the officers that Shanann is 15 weeks pregnant, that she would never abandon her medication or her phone, never vanish without telling someone, especially not with the girls in tow. Her urgency underscores what Chris does not show, highlighting the stark contrast in their reactions. As the officers wrap up their first check, they leave with more questions than answers, their notepads filled with observations. The home holds traces of routine but not of any voluntary departure. And Chris, the husband at the center of it all, seems strangely detached, almost performative in his cooperation. It is only the beginning of the investigation, but already the pieces do not fit, and whispers of something sinister begin to circulate. And just across the street, a neighbor with a security camera will soon provide footage that deepens the puzzle, and casts Chris Watts in an even stranger light, revealing movements in the dark that no explanation can fully justify. The following day, August 14th, the search tightens around the Watts home like a noose, every lead pursued with increasing intensity. Detectives know that in cases like these, the smallest piece of footage can shift the entire investigation, turning assumptions on their head. Across the street, neighbor Nate Stick, a friendly acquaintance of the family, offers something invaluable, his home surveillance camera, perfectly aimed toward the Watts driveway, capturing the comings and goings with crystal clarity. What it shows will become a cornerstone in the unraveling of Chris's story, a digital eyewitness that can't be swayed or silenced. Inside Nate's living room, police gather around the television as he cues up the recording from the early morning hours of August 13th, the screen flickering to life with grainy but telling images. The timestamp glows ominously, just after dawn, around 5:18 a.m., Chris's work truck is seen backing into the driveway, an unusual maneuver, since he almost never parks it that way, preferring to pull straight in for quick departures. For several agonizing minutes, the video captures the shadowy figure of Chris moving repeatedly between the house and the truck's rear compartment, loading what appear to be bulky items with deliberate care, his actions methodical and, to the investigators watching, deeply suspicious, as if he's handling something far heavier and more precious than tools. As the footage plays frame by frame, Chris stands nearby in Nate's home, his posture stiff and unnatural, beads of sweat forming despite the air conditioning. He shifts his weight uncomfortably, crosses his arms defensively, scratches the back of his neck in a telltale sign of anxiety. His voice, normally low and steady, stumbles through explanations. He was loading tools for work, he says, preparing for an early job site out in the oil fields. But the movements on the screen don't match the easy rhythm of a man heading to a routine shift, they suggest urgency, concealment, perhaps even the grim task of disposing of evidence, something not meant to be seen by prying eyes or cameras. Nate notices it too, his own unease growing. Later, he will recall Chris's nervousness in vivid detail, how his friend seemed fidgety in ways he never had before, pacing slightly and avoiding the screen. It is not just what the tape shows, but how Chris reacts to it, his eyes darting away as if the footage burns. When the officers step outside for a moment, Nate quietly adds his own observation to one of them: he's not acting right. He's never like this, usually so laid back, but today he's off. The comment plants another seed of doubt, one that grows with every inconsistency, adding a personal layer to the mounting evidence. For detectives, the contradictions are piling up like storm clouds: Shanann's phone left behind with its battery still half full, the children's favorite blankets still on their beds as if they'd just woken up, now a husband who claims to know nothing, yet caught on camera moving his truck in the pre-dawn dark with suspicious loads. It is a trifecta of suspicion, physical evidence, behavioral anomalies, and witness testimony converging into a compelling narrative of guilt. Back on the driveway, Chris continues to talk to the officers, his words precise but lacking the raw panic one would expect from a father whose entire family has disappeared without a trace. His tone is flat, his phrasing oddly rehearsed, as if he's reciting from a mental script prepared in advance. The contrast between his calm exterior and the mounting fear of Shanann's friend standing just a few feet away is striking, their faces etched with genuine terror while he maintains composure. The body camera captures it all in real time, the officers nodding politely but skeptically, the nervous neighbor glancing over, the husband trying to appear cooperative while his body language screams otherwise. But the air around the Watts home is changing, thickening with tension. What began as a welfare check now carries the unmistakable weight of a possible crime scene, the once idyllic cul-de-sac transformed into ground zero for a tragedy. And with the neighbor's footage secured and digitized for analysis, investigators will turn their focus inward, into Shanann's phone, her intimate messages, and the story of a marriage that looks far less perfect than the world was led to believe, uncovering digital breadcrumbs that reveal betrayal on a deeply personal level. Investigators know that in disappearances like this, digital trails often speak louder than any spoken words, revealing truths hidden behind closed doors. With Shanann missing, her phone becomes a silent witness, a treasure trove of data waiting to be unlocked. Every message, every draft unsent, every unsent thought now forms part of the evidence mosaic. As analysts scroll through the history with forensic tools, a new picture emerges, one that shatters the pristine family image Chris and Shanann had so carefully built online, exposing the raw underbelly of their relationship. The texts reveal a woman struggling valiantly to hold her marriage together amid mounting despair. Shanann's words are filled with both enduring love and raw desperation, reminders of upcoming counseling sessions they'd scheduled to rebuild trust, pleas for better communication like, "We need to talk more, really talk," worries about Chris's growing emotional distance that left her feeling isolated. She confides in close friends via group chats, admitting she feels him slipping away, perhaps into the arms of someone else, though she couldn't yet name the threat. She is pregnant with their third child, a boy they plan to name Nico, a name chosen for its strength and new beginnings, and she writes about her hope that this baby might bring them closer again, reigniting the spark from their early days. But beneath her trademark optimism is a palpable fear that Chris no longer wants the same life she does, that the family she cherished is crumbling from within. Then comes the financial layer, peeled back like an onion to reveal tears. Bank records, credit card statements, and overdue notices map out a family living under relentless pressure, far from the affluent image projected. Behind the polished Instagram posts of vacations and home improvements, the Watts household is straining to keep up with over $70,000 in debt from credit cards, medical bills from Shanann's health issues, and the costs of raising 2 active children with another on the way. It is a vicious cycle of debt hidden behind the illusion of comfort and success. Detectives recognize the pattern all too well. Money problems often sit at the core of domestic stress, fueling arguments and resentments that fester unchecked. But the most devastating discovery is personal, not financial, a betrayal that cuts to the bone. As interviews expand to Chris's co-workers at Anadarko, quiet whispers of a relationship surface, hesitant admissions from those who suspected but said nothing. Investigators dig deeper, subpoenaing phone records and emails, and soon the truth surfaces in stark detail. Chris has been involved with a colleague named Nickel Kessinger, a geologist he met at work just months earlier. The relationship is recent but intense, romantic messages filled with passion like, "I can't stop thinking about you," secret meetings in parked cars or her apartment, the intoxicating energy of new love that made Chris feel alive in ways his marriage no longer did. For police, this revelation is not just scandalous, it is motive crystallized, a reason to escape the life he felt trapped in. The dual life comes into sharper focus, a Jekyll and Hyde existence. At home, Chris is the quiet family man, smiling in photos during weekend barbecues, grilling burgers in the backyard while the girls play. Away from it, he is someone else entirely, thinner from his intense workouts, more confident in his flirtations, texting Nickel late at night with promises of a future together, telling Shanann he's too tired or too busy for intimacy while telling another woman the opposite, weaving lies that grew more elaborate by the day. The gap between these two Chris's widens with every new detail uncovered, from deleted messages recovered to GPS data showing clandestine meetups. Shanann sensed it intuitively, her woman's intuition sharpening in those final weeks. She documented her suspicions in journals and texts, her fears that the man she married, a high school sweetheart turned devoted partner, was no longer the man standing in front of her, his affections diverted elsewhere. She poured her heart into messages that now serve as haunting testimony, evidence of a woman fighting tooth and nail for her marriage while unknowingly circling its tragic end, even confronting Chris about possible infidelity during their last argument. For investigators, the pieces start to align like a grim jigsaw, a family under crushing financial strain. A husband consumed by a passionate new affair that promised freedom. A wife vulnerable in her pregnancy, her body and emotions taxed. And now, a disappearance that cannot be explained by mere coincidence, but by calculated actions. By late August 14th, what began as a missing persons case is shifting towards something darker, more sinister. Detectives see not just a vanishing, but a pattern of deception woven through every aspect of Chris's life. And as Chris struggles to maintain his version of events, the world will soon watch him take center stage, delivering an emotional plea on his front porch, a performance that will only deepen the shadows around him, drawing millions into the unfolding drama. The cameras roll on a bright August afternoon as Chris Watt steps tentatively onto his front porch, the sun casting long shadows across the lawn. His home, 2 stories of beige siding and crisp white trim, forms the backdrop, but now it is no longer a symbol of suburban peace, it is a stage, and Chris is its reluctant actor, thrust into the spotlight by local news crews. Reporters aim microphones toward him like weapons, their lenses capturing every blink, every subtle pause, every micro-expression that might betray him. This is the first public appeal for his missing wife and children, a moment designed to rally the community but destined to backfire spectacularly. Chris speaks in a steady voice, almost monotone, pleading for Shanann, Bella, and Celeste to just come back, his words echoing hollowly. He repeats himself, the phrases more practiced than raw, as if pulled from a true crime script he'd seen on TV. He talks about how much he misses them, how empty the house feels without their laughter and chaos, but his delivery lacks the gut-wrenching sobs or frantic pleas one might expect. His body sways slightly, hands tucked deep into his pockets, shoulders hunched tight against an invisible weight. The performance is meant to project anguish, but what viewers see instead is restraint, an unnatural calm that rings hollow, a detachment that raises eyebrows nationwide. Inside the house behind him, Shanann's best friend Nicole and other family members watch from the shadows through the windows, their anxiety growing into outright disbelief. To them, Chris's composure doesn't feel like quiet strength, it feels like cold detachment, a man going through motions rather than feeling the loss. The contrast is stark. Those who truly fear for Shanann's safety radiate palpable panic, tears streaming, voices breaking, while her husband delivers his plea with the coolness of someone reading a weather report. The footage plays across television screens nationwide within hours, looping on cable news and going viral on social media. Neighbors, strangers, and armchair detectives scrutinize every gesture under a microscope. Why doesn't he make direct eye contact with the camera, instead glancing sideways? Why does he cross his arms defensively when speaking of his daughter's favorite games? Why does his tone lack the urgency of a desperate father, sounding more like mild inconvenience? In the true crime lexicon, it is a textbook example of the guilty interview, a performance where the absence of genuine emotion is more telling than the words themselves, fueling online forums with theories and breakdowns. For investigators, the interview is both useful and damning, a goldmine of material. It provides them with hours of Chris's voice and behavior to analyze frame by frame, consulting body language experts who point out the tells, the micro-expressions of relief when questions shift, the lack of Duchenne smiles that reach the eyes. They watch as he fumbles through answers, shifting between saying, "I hope they're safe somewhere," and "I just want them back," never once expressing outright fear of harm or desperation for their immediate return, avoiding specifics about what he thinks might have happened. His detachment, already noted in initial police reports, is now broadcast live to millions, solidifying suspicions. The public reaction is swift and unforgiving. Community members begin to whisper that something isn't right, gathering in small groups on sidewalks to discuss. The polished family image once displayed on Shanann's Facebook, posts of beach vacations, holiday celebrations, and loving tributes, is dissolving into suspicion, frame by frame, as people rewatch her videos with new eyes, spotting hints of strain in her smiles. Yet the most critical impact is not among the public, it is within the investigation itself. Detectives note the mismatch between Chris's polished plea and the troubling evidence piling up, the surveillance footage showing his pre-dawn activities, Shanann's phone with its incriminating texts, the financial strain evident in bankruptcy filings just months earlier, the affair confirmed by Nichols' own statements to police. Every inconsistency grows sharper in light of his carefully measured performance, turning the tide decisively. The porch interview is not the climax, it is the pivot, the moment the narrative shifts irreversibly. From this moment forward, Chris Watts is no longer simply a grieving husband, he is a suspect under a microscope, his every move tracked. And the next step for investigators will be decisive. They will invite him into a controlled environment, strap him to a machine designed to detect lies, and ask questions that can no longer be avoided or deflected. The polygraph test is waiting, a technological arbiter that will crack open the case wide. 2 days after his front porch plea, on August 15, Chris Watts walks into the Colorado Bureau of Investigation headquarters in Broomfield, the building a quiet, clinical fortress stripped of the warmth of his suburban neighborhood. He has agreed to take a polygraph test, something most innocent spouses might hesitate to do out of fear of machine error or false positives. But Chris insists he has nothing to hide, projecting confidence as he signs the consent forms. To the investigators watching from behind one-way glass, this is both an opportunity to probe deeper and a risk, knowing polygraphs aren't foolproof but can break a suspect's resolve. The test begins with routine questions, designed to establish a baseline of truth. Is your name Chris? Do you live in Frederick? Chris's answers are short, precise, almost rehearsed, his voice steady as sensors monitor his heart rate, breathing, and sweat. He insists Shanann and the girls left the house alive after their argument, perhaps driven away by a friend. He claims he does not know where they went, repeating denials with mechanical consistency. But the machine records what his voice does not: spikes in stress levels, physiological tremors that betray his calm exterior, graphs jumping like seismographs during an earthquake when key questions about the murders are posed. When the polygraph is complete, the results are clear and unequivocal: he has failed miserably, showing deception on nearly every critical question. And now the true interrogation begins, escalating from polite inquiry to intense pressure. Agents from CBI and the FBI sit across from him in a windowless room, their tone firm but steady, building rapport before dismantling his story. They remind him of the evidence already gathered: Shanann's phone with texts begging for reconciliation, her car untouched in the garage, the surveillance footage capturing his suspicious loading, the inconsistencies in his timeline that don't add up. The weight of these details presses down like a vice, stripping away his carefully controlled persona layer by layer. Chris shifts in his chair, folding his arms defensively, then unfolding them in agitation, leaning forward as if searching for an exit in the blank walls. He denies, deflects, but each denial sounds thinner than the last, his voice cracking under the strain. The investigators press harder, showing him printed timelines of his phone pings, confronting him with contradictions like why his GPS shows him at the oil site longer than usual, asking why a husband and father would fail a polygraph if he were telling the truth. The room grows smaller with every question, the air thick with tension as they suggest he might have snapped in a moment of rage. Finally, after hours of back and forth, Chris cracks, but only partially, in a calculated way. Through manufactured tears and halting sobs, he offers a story that shifts blame entirely. He claims he came home to find Shanann had strangled the girls in a fit of rage after he confessed his affair, and that in a blind moment of fury, he retaliated by strangling her. It is a desperate attempt to salvage sympathy, to redirect responsibility onto the victim, to preserve some shred of his image as a protector gone wrong. But investigators recognize the tactic immediately. It's a common ploy in familial homicides, a half-confession that acknowledges death while distorting the truth to minimize culpability. They press for more, and slowly, Chris admits to disposing of the bodies, pointing them toward the oil fields. Outside the room, law enforcement begins preparing for the next step with urgency. Chris's words, though evasive, point directly toward the remote oil fields where he worked, a place he knew intimately. Search warrants are drafted in record time, crime scene units mobilized with helicopters and K-9 teams. The possibility of recovery, not rescue, takes grim shape, shifting the operation from hope to horror. For the agents in that interrogation room, the shift is definitive and irreversible. They are no longer searching for a missing family alive, they are pursuing evidence of cold-blooded murder. And as Chris's fragile story unravels thread by thread, the focus turns to a place far from the quiet cul-de-sac in Frederick, the remote oil sites of Anadarko Petroleum, vast and isolated, where investigators believe the truth, and the bodies, will finally be found, buried in the earth or hidden in industrial tombs. The interrogation has given investigators a crucial lead, Chris's intimate connection to the oil fields of Anadarko Petroleum, where he worked as a field operator maintaining the massive tanks and pipelines. In the early hours of August 16, search teams are dispatched under the cover of dawn, their vehicles racing across the Colorado prairie. Their destination is a sprawling, isolated worksite, a desolate patch of land dominated by towering storage tanks, humming drilling equipment, and the acrid smell of crude oil. It is a place built for industry, not for human tragedy, a harsh landscape where the wind howls and secrets can be buried deep. And yet, detectives suspect it has become the final resting ground of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, chosen by Chris for its remoteness and his familiarity. The operation unfolds with military precision, every step coordinated to preserve evidence. Crime scene units arrive in unmarked vehicles to avoid attracting the swarming media helicopters overhead. Drones are deployed, buzzing like mechanical birds to capture aerial views of the area in high-definition detail, mapping potential disturbances in the soil. Every movement is deliberate, every footprint logged in detailed reports to ensure chain of custody. Investigators know they must document the scene flawlessly, not just to recover the victims with dignity, but to ensure their case against Chris can withstand the scrutiny of trial and appeals. Near one of the massive oil tanks, labeled Survey 319, searchers locate disturbed earth, a patch of ground recently turned over, shallow and hurried, a burial made not with care but with desperation and haste under the cover of early morning light. It is here, after careful excavation with brushes and trowels, that they uncover Shanann's body, wrapped in a sheet from their home, her pregnancy marking the crime with an even deeper cruelty, the unborn Nico still within her, a life extinguished before it began. The discovery is heartbreaking, a moment where even hardened officers pause, the weight of the loss palpable in the air. But it confirms what detectives feared since Chris's failed polygraph: this is no disappearance, it is a premeditated homicide, planned and executed with chilling efficiency. The search does not end there, suspicion shifts to the oil tanks themselves, towering steel cylinders, each 30 feet high, filled with hundreds of barrels of viscous crude oil. Investigators climb rickety ladders, peering into the dark, narrow openings at the top, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. What they find shocks even seasoned professionals, a horror beyond comprehension. Inside two separate tanks, submerged in a thick, black liquid, are the tiny remains of Bella and Celeste, forced through hatches barely wide enough, their bodies concealed in a way that speaks to calculated depravity. The concealment is as calculated as it is horrific, using the industrial site to dissolve evidence, but forensics will later reveal hair and tissue caught in the mechanisms. To law enforcement, it is irrefutable proof of intent, planning, and a chilling disregard for the sanctity of life, especially that of his own children. From this point forward, the case becomes a matter of meticulous forensics, a symphony of science. Specialists in hazmat suits recover evidence with painstaking care, using industrial pumps to drain the tanks, swabs to collect DNA, and containment units to preserve samples. Every item is sealed in evidence bags, photographed from multiple angles, and catalogued with barcodes. Analysts will later compare soil samples from the burial site to Chris's truck tires, GPS telemetry from his work vehicle showing his exact route that morning, and time-stamped data from Anadarko's security systems confirming no one else was present. The science leaves little room for ambiguity. Chris drove directly to this site after the murders, spending over an hour disposing of his family as if they were waste. Back in Frederick, news of the discovery begins to spread like wildfire through media alerts and leaks, the community reeling in shock. The perfect family portrait is gone forever, replaced with the stark reality of yellow crime scene tape fluttering in the wind and recovery vehicles hauling away grim cargo. For Shanann's friends and family, the nightmare they feared is confirmed in the most devastating way possible, gatherings turning into vigils where candles flicker for the lost souls. The story has shifted from mystery to mourning, with memorial services planned amid tears. And for prosecutors, the narrative is tightening around Chris like handcuffs. The affair with Nickel, who would later cooperate fully with police, providing timelines of their relationship, the financial struggles detailed in court filings, the restless detachment evident in his changed demeanor, all now frame the actions of a man who attempted to erase his own family under the cover of an ordinary workday, dreaming of a fresh start unencumbered. Yet the investigation is not over, loose ends remain. The bodies have been found, but the motive remains fractured between half-truths and denial, with Chris's initial blame shifting exposed as a lie. The courtroom will demand a full confession, a plea, and ultimately a sentence that reflects the magnitude of what happened in that suburban home. And it is there, in the sterile halls of justice, that Chris Watts will finally be forced to answer for his crimes, facing the families whose lives he shattered. The courtroom in Weld County District Court is silent as a tomb as Chris Watts enters in a bright orange jumpsuit, his wrists bound in heavy chains that clink with each step, a far cry from the free man he once was. It has been just 3 months since Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and unborn baby Nico were laid to rest in a North Carolina cemetery, surrounded by loved ones in a sea of flowers and tears, but for the families gathered in the gallery, time has collapsed into one endless moment of grief, reliving the horror daily. The man once seen as a devoted father and husband, coaching the girls' soccer or helping with homework, now faces charges that could end his life, his face gaunt and expressionless. Prosecutors lay out the case with clinical precision, their voices steady as they present, 5 counts of first-degree murder, including for Nico under Colorado's fetal homicide laws, evidence of premeditation from deleted searches on his phone for how to make a body disappear, and the brutality of covering up a crime against his own children, details of the autopsies revealing Shanann was strangled for minutes, the girls smothered one by one, Bella's last moments marked by bite marks on her tongue from fighting back. The forensics from the oil site, the surveillance footage frame by frame, the text messages begging for love, all of it converges into a story too horrific to deny, a tapestry of betrayal. Yet in the background looms the ultimate question of punishment: will Chris face the death penalty, the needle for his crimes, or will he be allowed to live out his days behind bars, reflecting on what he destroyed? His defense team, sensing the overwhelming evidence, strikes a deal behind closed doors. In exchange for avoiding execution and the protracted appeals it entails, Chris pleads guilty to every charge in a hushed courtroom session. It is a decision that spares Shanann's family the trauma of a lengthy trial, where graphic photos and testimonies would reopen wounds, but it offers no true comfort, no catharsis. For them, justice without full accountability feels hollow, a bandage over a gaping wound. They want to know why a father would extinguish the lives of his children, Bella reportedly pleading, "Daddy, no," in her final breaths, why a husband would turn on the woman carrying his son after she begged for their marriage, why, of all the choices available to him like divorce or therapy, he chose annihilation, a path of irreversible violence. The sentencing hearing unfolds with devastating impact on November 19, 2018, the room packed with media and supporters. Shanann's parents, Frank and Sandy Rzusek, and her brother Frankie step forward to deliver their victim impact statements, each word heavy, trembling with sorrow and unbridled fury. They speak not only of profound loss, the empty chairs at holidays, the unopened Christmas gifts, but of betrayal, the unbearable knowledge that the person they once welcomed into their family with open arms, sharing meals and milestones, is the same person who destroyed it in cold blood, robbing them of grandchildren's futures. When it is his turn to speak, Chris says almost nothing, his voice barely above a whisper. He does not offer a detailed explanation, nor does he ask for forgiveness, mumbling only vague regrets without specifics. His silence is deafening, a final act of cowardice. The image of control that once defined him has collapsed into emptiness, a shell of a man. The judge, visibly shaken by the case's brutality, addresses the court with gravity. The crimes are among the most inhumane he has ever encountered, a violation of the sacred trust of family. With that, Chris Watts is sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, 5 consecutive life terms plus 48 years for unlawful termination and tampering, ensuring he will never again walk free, confined to a maximum security prison. The gavel falls with finality, but the questions linger like ghosts in the room. The courtroom empties slowly, leaving behind only echoes, the sound of a father's quiet sobbing from the gallery, the rustle of grieving family members embracing in shared pain, the hollow shuffle of shackles leading Chris away to his fate. There is legal closure, a chapter ended, but no resolution to the deeper mystery of motive, no satisfying answer to the why that haunts survivors. For the public, the case becomes a haunting reminder of how quickly a carefully curated life can unravel into nightmare, inspiring books like My Daddy is a Hero, written by Shanann's family to honor her. For Shanann's loved ones, it is the beginning of a life sentence of their own, one defined by absence, by birthdays never celebrated with cakes and songs, by voices silenced forever but preserved in videos. And yet, even with a verdict delivered, investigators, experts, and the community at large are left sifting through the aftermath, piecing together missed signs. What warning signs were missed in the social media glow? How did a home that appeared so perfect conceal so much danger, from emotional abuse to lethal intent? These questions will form the basis of the final reckoning, a broader reflection on the hidden fractures that led to unimaginable violence, urging society to look closer. In the aftermath of the trial, with Chris Watts locked away for life in a Wisconsin prison for his safety, transferred to avoid threats from inmates, the investigation no longer centers on gathering evidence but on extracting meaning from the ruins. What happened inside that suburban home in Frederick, Colorado, is no longer just a crime story, it is a profound study in how facades fracture and collapse under pressure, a cautionary tale dissected in psychology classes and true crime series. Behind the smiling photos of family outings, the cheerful Facebook videos of dance parties and milestones, and the image of a thriving young family, there were signals, subtle and persistent, that something was dangerously wrong, signs that, if heeded, might have altered fate. Experts in criminal psychology begin to dissect those signals with academic rigor, pointing to patterns of narcissistic control, the quiet withdrawal of affection that left Shanann feeling unloved, the sudden shifts in routine that she herself noticed and documented in her journal entries. Financial stress weighed heavily, amplifying tension to breaking point, debts from Shanann's past surgeries for lupus and cervical issues, coupled with Chris's desire for a lifestyle beyond their means. The affair with Nicole Kessinger added another layer of duplicity, a double life that required Chris to maintain two incompatible versions of himself, the dutiful dad at home and the passionate lover elsewhere, the cognitive dissonance building until it exploded. The pressure to keep up appearances, outwardly the devoted father posting loving comments, secretly restless and plotting an escape, became unsustainable, leading to what psychologists call a family annihilator profile, where elimination seems the only way out. Friends and relatives recall moments that, in hindsight, now look like glaring red flags, pieced together in interviews. The way Chris became more distant in the months leading up, losing 13 pounds through obsessive workouts, focusing on himself with new clothes and grooming instead of family time, even changing his cologne. Shanann's texts and videos, where her trademark optimism mingled with underlying worry about his late nights at work, now serve as evidence of her awareness that something was slipping beyond her control. Her attempts to confront him met with gaslighting. Forensic analysts stress that these moments matter, that domestic homicides often germinate in a soil of secrecy, resentment, and denial before erupting into violence, with warning signs like increased isolation or sudden behavioral changes. Yet investigators are careful to strip the story of sensationalism in their reports and briefings, emphasizing education over exploitation. This is not a tale of monsters lurking in shadows but of a man who hid in plain sight, presenting normalcy while harboring dark intentions, mimicking the rhythms of family life, breakfast routines, bedtime stories, while masking impulses that no one around him dared imagine possible in their quiet neighbor. In documentaries like American Murder, The Family Next Door, Chris's porch interview is replayed alongside footage of his interrogation, slowed down for analysis. Experts highlight the dissonance, the mask of calm slipping with lip licks and throat clears, the avoidance of detail in his stories, the performative language of someone staging innocence rather than living it. Each clip serves as a cautionary example of how appearance and reality diverge, and how law enforcement is trained to detect the cracks between them through behavioral analysis units. For Shanann's family, however, analysis brings no solace, only a drive to honor her legacy. They keep her memory alive through the Shanann What's Legacy Foundation, supporting victims of domestic violence, through public speaking engagements where they share her story to raise awareness, and through the insistence that Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and baby Nico be remembered not for the gruesome way they died, but for how vibrantly they lived. Shanann's entrepreneurial spirit, the girls' innocent joys captured in videos of them singing and playing. In preserved photographs, the girls' smiles are luminous, their voices echoing in recordings that Shanann shared with friends, a digital archive of love that outlasts the tragedy. The What's case reverberates far beyond Colorado, echoing in courtrooms and living rooms across the globe. It raises uncomfortable questions about the culture of curated perfection on social media, where filtered lives hide turmoil, about the masks worn in neighborhoods across America, where nice guys can harbor lethal secrets, about how easily danger can be hidden in plain sight, behind closed doors of seemingly happy homes. True crime audiences see it as a chilling reminder, even the most ordinary home can conceal extraordinary darkness, prompting calls for better domestic violence resources and awareness training. And as the story closes, the lens widens to encompass a larger truth. The murders of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico are not just the end of a family, they are a stark warning about trust, about vigilance in relationships, about the devastating costs of silence when intuition whispers danger. For viewers, the haunting image is not the crime scene itself, shrouded in tape and shadows, but the smiling family videos that preceded it, those moments of apparent joy now tinged with foreboding. A reminder that sometimes, the most terrifying nightmares begin in places that look the most perfect, urging us all to look beyond the surface before it's too late.